Hey y'all, welcome to Simple Conversations. This is KJ.
Hey, and it's Alice. So pause us for a minute, grab you something to drink, come back, sit down, and be a part of this conversation.
Because we have a lot to say. Welcome to Simple Conversations. So y'all, listen, this is our disclaimer. We're not here to give you any advice or tell you how to live your life.
Well, maybe just a little.
We're still trying to figure this thing out ourselves. Thanks for tuning in. Hey y'all, welcome back to Simple Conversations where grace meets strength. Hey Alice.
Hey KJ, we're pros at this today.
Oh yes, we're pros. We've done 22 podcasts and we still don't really know what we're doing. We're winging this thing.
We've done 2 today. So I feel like
2 today. Oh, because we did 2 in one day, now we're pros.
We are.
Professionals.
We are. No.
Right, exactly. So this is different that we are recording a podcast in the evening. I kind of like it.
Okay.
So anyway.
All right. So listeners, we have a friend of mine, Leah Cejas-Brown. I have known Leah 4 years. How long have you been at school?
5
years. Okay, so I've known Leah 5 years. So I met because she works at the same school that I work at. She's a real teacher, y'all. Y'all know I'm an elective teacher. She's a real teacher, a serious math teacher. So we were co-workers, and she taught our daughter, my daughter, at school. Actually, one of Alyssa's favorite teachers because she loved good at math and she really liked you in class. And you had the lizard thing. What did you have in class?
I had a bearded dragon.
Yes. And
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I invited Leah to come on the podcast tonight because I wanted to talk about Black History. I'm going to air quote month. And we'll get into all of the whys in a few minutes. And I asked Leah because every year at school, she does an amazing job of making sure that our students are aware of Black history, and it's all over the hallways, and they do presentations, and she just does an amazing job, even though history is not her subject. And I love that so much. We also share some similar thought processes about culture and the world we live in and being able to celebrate diversity. So, Leah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So give our audience just a little bit of background on Leah.
Oh, where to start? I'm a mom, a wife. I have 2 little ones, a boy and a girl, and they're very active. I am a high school math teacher. I actually got my degree in applied mathematics, and I did not go to school for education, but found myself in teaching. I've actually always wanted to teach since I was, I think, 5, actually. Okay. So I do enjoy it. I love educating. I love working with teenagers. I'm better with teenagers than I am with any other age level. But yeah, I think that's me. I went to school at the Norfolk State University.
Okay. All right. And you have several siblings. Is that right? Do I remember that from,
I do.
My youngest brother.
Mm-hmm.
Was it last year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he graduated last year.
So I taught Rodolfo last year, and I remember him talking about his siblings. So tell me where you are in that family lineup.
Oh, goodness. So we have a blended family. So my mom had me, and then my dad had, my stepdad, if you will, but I just call him my dad. He already had 3, and then they got married and together had 2 more. So it is 6 total, 5 girls, 1 boy, and I'm in the middle somewhere. And then on my biological side, my biological father's side, he has, I believe, 6, but I know 2 of them. So large family.
So Rodolfo didn't stand a chance with 5 older sisters now. He just
still doesn't.
He was always a pleasure to have in class. Okay. So where do you want to start? So the conversation that we had at lunch the other day, I was asking you, When do you remember? Okay, so for our audience, and we'll take a picture so we can post it to social media later. Don't let me forget that, Kate. When do you, as a Black woman growing up, did you grow up in Norfolk? I mean, you grew up in Virginia.
No, I've moved all around, but you could say my growing up years happened here. Sure.
Okay, so that's kind of in the South. I'm from North Carolina, we were definitely South. When did it occur to you that Black history was only given a month? I'll just say it like that because I don't know another way to word that.
It occurred to me in elementary school, and the elementary school that I was going to, I remember there was kind of a protest in a way of parents because the school, and I won't go as far as to say district because I don't remember all of the ins and outs, but the school would not consider Martin Luther King Day a holiday. And that began all of the conversation about, the shortest month of the year happens to be Black History Month. And it just got the ball rolling. But that was the first time that I was really aware, like, wow, this is really still a big issue. And I was in second grade at the time.
Okay. So I went back and looked. So I was telling you too at lunch that day that I went to school in rural North Carolina, and I was actually wrong on the stats. Like our school was so small, I counted the classes. That's how small we were for middle school. So I was in seventh grade. So in our middle school, I had gone to school with all of these children from kindergarten through seventh grade, same school. So sixth grade was still then elementary, seventh and eighth was middle, and then ninth grade you went to the high school. So seventh grade, because we were county, they brought in 3 other school districts and then blended us all together for middle school. So there were roughly 150 students per grade. So out of that, it was 55% Black and 45% white.
Okay.
I did grow up in predominantly a Black area. And I don't really know how to put in context the difference between what I learned when it came to race and what I learned when it came to culture. Because of how we grew up, I think that line blurs a lot for me. So when I'm talking to somebody and it might be a race thing, but for me, it was really a culture thing. So I don't know the right way to word that. But I'm so glad that I grew up that way and grew up where I grew up, because I think it totally did have a huge impact on how I see people. Now, I am from the South. I am sure I grew up around race in a negative way, like racist people. That. And I'm sure they're in my family, but never like in my face in that sense. There were lines that were never discussed, but but so like I had lots of friends at school, but none of my Black girlfriends ever slept over at my house. It wasn't because they wanted to and weren't allowed to. And it wasn't because I wanted to go to their house and wasn't allowed to. It was just never even discussed. Like it was just an unspoken thing. It's funny too, because I was looking back through my album, my yearbook today. It's a sad little yearbook too. It's a little paper. And I was reading through all the comments of all the best friend comments. Like, so, it wasn't my imagination. Like I really and I'm still friends with people on Facebook from those years because I didn't graduate there, but because I went to so many schools after that, I have so many relationships that those were my solid school friends. Anyway, interesting to go back and kind of reminisce about that. So for me, it would have been elementary school. And I think I shared with you, it was in an assembly type thing. I think there was a contest, and it may not have even been about Black History Month. I don't remember. I just remember he was a year older than me. His name was Melvin Miller, and he gave the I Have a Dream speech. And that probably, and he did an amazing job, just an amazing job. But I still remember today sitting on the floor in the library on the carpet, watching him give this speech. And I just remember the impact that made moving forward. So I asked several, well, not several, but I did ask a few people today, some educators, some just white people, like, what would you want to see come out of this podcast? And so I had one friend say, she is an educator, and she said that Black history is American history. And then I said, so how do we as educators, because even though I'm an elective teacher, like I'm just a teacher naturally, like I do consider myself just an educator, period. How do we, well, one, how do we get the history books changed so that they reflect an accurate view of history? But even though they don't, how do we as educators portray history accurately? Her response to that was educators have to choose a variety of books to supplement history all year, where your main characters are Black and Hispanic and Asian and Muslim and et cetera, et cetera. I agree with that totally. Okay, so give me your feedback. Give me some thoughts.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I feel like we actually could probably take a page from a lot of our AP teachers, because I think they are used to pulling a lot of supplement, material to enhance their lesson, because that's part of the AP exam. And I remember I had two amazing AP history teachers that just brought history to life for me. And it was all year. I mean, all year I was learning about people I didn't know from all backgrounds and walks of life and from different parts of the world. But I never got that in just a regular history class. I also think that when you have history teachers that are natural historians, I do think they'll bring an element, to their classroom as well. But yeah, I just think as educators, it's we are already very taxed and pulled in a lot of directions. And so the thought of having to go out and look for more and do more can be very exhausting. But I think just remembering that if we want to see a different world, if we want our kids to grow up in something different, we've got to put in the work. The same way as moms, we stay up in the late hours if our kids are sick or whatever, we put in the work. I think it's the same for teachers as well, because we do spend a lot of time with them and they can learn a lot from us if we just give it to them, and they're curious, they want to know.
I agree with that. So there's a website called the Mighty Girl website. And I love it because it's like all girl empowerment things. So it gives you like girls that have done inventions and girls in history and like all the girl things. And I love that because the only way that I can connect to how Black people must feel marginalized is as a woman also being marginalized. You get a double, right? Yeah. So I can kind of relate on that level of, okay, I can, as a woman all day long say, hey, hello, what about me over here? Hello, right? But if Timothy, the white man in the room, does that, that's a whole different thing, right? Yeah, whole different thing. And so I asked my son, so Donovan is, I always forget how old is he? 34 this year. He'll be 34, single dad. Well, was a single dad. He just got married a little bit ago. And so I asked him today what he would come out of, what would he like to see? Because he has great input when I'm doing podcasts like this. And he said, encourage people to take note of the aftershocks of racism. Long-term effects on our media and culture that we've become so accustomed to that we don't even notice. He said, how many sitcoms have an all or mostly white cast, commercials, magazine ads, covers, etc.? He said, we praised diversity all through the 90s while we were watching Friends. And I thought that's so true. Like, how often do I, as a white person, sit down in front of a movie, and I'm way more aware of it now than I used to be, because now I'm like, there's only white people at this church, or we watch a movie and I'm like, there was not a single person of color, different person, like I do pay attention to it now, but I'm sure for years I didn't. Yeah, I'm sure for years I didn't. And so he was talking about the aftershock of that. And I was thinking over the weekend, I was telling KJ this earlier today, that I was thinking about what happens when we don't teach African American history or Black history, or, you know, when we don't know the truth of what it is, then you only know then what you've been exposed to. And that's dangerous, because then we only know. Okay, so for me, that would be different. I grew up, I have a different context. KJ grew up with a different context. But if you didn't grow up with that context, sorry, I lost my screen. Then, sorry, you guys. Then all you know is what's been portrayed to you through media, again, shows, stereotypes, and whatever, which I was watching one of the documentaries and they were talking about that's why it's so important to teach history accurately, to erase, if possible, the negative stereotypes that we've seen for hundreds of years. So
yeah, I would agree. And I think the negative effects can, you know, go both ways, and only knowing what you're exposed to. Because I think even on the Black side of it, if all you see is, well, we're on TV because we play basketball, you know, then, or play football, then you think that that's all you can amount to. And if you're not one of those, you're not athletic or you're clumsy, then automatically you feel set back and at a disadvantage. And so then why pay attention in school? And then why, you know, have these dreams to do something, and then you start misbehaving in class, because why? There's nothing for you to do. So yeah, I do think it does go both ways, you know, being able to see yourself. And for me, that's always been very important for my kids, to make sure that even their library here has so many books, they can see themselves. My son loves the book by Cejas-Brown. It's I Am Enough. Oh my goodness, of course the name just escaped me, and we read it like every night.
Is it I Love You So Much?
No, I Am Perfectly Designed. That's what it is, Perfectly Designed. And so the dad in there, he's from the Fab Five. I don't know if you guys watch that show, but he's one of the interior decorators up there. But he's bald head, and so he looks like my husband, and the little boy that he adopted looks like my son. And every time he gets a haircut, he's like, I am perfectly designed and I am enough. But it's because he can see himself in that textbook. He has another book about a boy that creates a rocket ship on a rainy day out of like his bedroom furniture. And he's like, I can be creative and I can fly to the moon. Like, but he would never talk that way if I didn't have books that look like him. He's had other rocket ship books with white kids in it, but he's never put himself there. So the exposure goes both ways for sure.
Yeah, I think that's so valuable. Yeah, I agree with that. So tell me about some of the things that you've done at school for projects for exposing our students.
So the first year, if I'm being 1,000% honest, it's always been very difficult. I don't know that our school has actually ever done a very good job in embracing Black History Month. And so the first year I remember expecting to walk in and see a poster. I mean, Martin Luther King or Rosa Parks, somebody like, you know, and, you know, there was nothing. And so I stayed later and I had posters. I got all my posters up and I created Black History Month mathematician or whatever, and it had their silhouette and like a description, and they had to guess like who was it by reading their bio. They could go home, research, Google, and then, you know, drop the answer like in a hat or whatever. So that's what we did the first year. And then I did notice the second year there was a couple more posters, so that was good. We're making some progress. I couldn't even remember what I did the second year, but I know I've given extra credit reports, and I do mostly focus on mathematicians. because there's been a lot. We wouldn't have stoplights and all kinds of things if it wasn't for the help of African Americans. So I do like to focus on the STEM side. I am a math teacher. But last year was probably the biggest thing that I've done in having every high school student research just African Americans, past, present, future. And there were some white people as well, because they helped. And we wouldn't necessarily be able to make as much progress if it wasn't for the teamwork. And so I wanted them to see that as well. And we took breaks in between classes, and each one embodied their character to the best of their ability and just presented about who they were in history and what they did and if they were still alive and what they were currently doing. And then we took an entire chapel time to finish up the presentation. So it was good. I think it was very, it definitely exposed a lot. I think even to see simple things that like a student wouldn't know how to pronounce Maya Angelou's name, and they called her Maya Angelou. Like it just goes to show that, man, outside of this school, you're probably not getting anything. And I think that's something that we have to think about, as parents and as educators. This year, there was a little bit more progress. I didn't do a whole lot. I did see that there were some things in the hallway. And I think near the end of the month, for like the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks, they tried to talk about a couple Black History Month people. But yeah, there actually wasn't much said this school year.
Yeah, there were, I think there was more on the wall, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
To read that. So yeah. So I was, this is interesting when you were talking about the posters. So some of the things that I watched was the show Blackish. So my daughter Alyssa said, okay, so you have to watch this before you do that podcast, because they talk about this a lot. And so I watched the one on Black History Month, which is in their 5th season, and then I watched one on what was it, also the 5th season, when they were doing the complexion one, which didn't have anything to do with Black history, but it was just really good, really interesting. But they did the one on Black History Month, and the dad was really upset because they came home from school and the twins both threw their posters in the trash. And they were like, well, Black History Month is over. We can throw this away now. And he was like, no, don't throw that away. And the son was like, oh yeah, that's right. We will just use this again next year, because they just learned about Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, and Frederick Douglass. Top 4. And then the mom kept throwing in, who did she keep throwing in? That was her, Sinbad. That was her. I'm leaving him in there. I'm keeping him. He's in the top 4. Anyway, it was really funny. But so the dad went through and went to school and gave his own presentation. And so he was trying to narrow it down to one person that the teacher kept leaving out. Like, who was the one person that I can talk about that would make such a difference? And when he finally got there, it was like, there's not one person. He said, I can't sum up for you history, all this history with one person, or even in one, or even in this, presentation. And so he went through name after name after name of people, past, present, current, that have made a significant contribution that are part of our history as America, as America. Yeah. Anyway, that was really good.
Yeah, I like that show.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, they're
funny. So do you think, Leah, that at your school, because is it okay for me to say that you teach at a private school? And so do you think that your students are getting less exposure in a private setting than they would in a public setting when it comes to Black History Month?
For sure.
I
would definitely say that, because I think when you look at most public schools, they have to have more of a diversity on even the leadership side of things. And so if you don't have that diversity, you have blind spots. And if you don't have someone that can help you point out those blind spots, you're going to miss things. And I believe last year was the first year that they added that diversity to their leadership team. So that means up until then, you've had blind spots for a very long time. And it's hard to lead a group if you have people in that group that don't look like you. You're going to miss things. And so, yes, the large percent of the school is white for sure, but you do have a handful of Black people and they feel it. And they've had very open and candid conversations with me, and they hurt, and I hurt for them. So I do think our students are less exposed for sure.
But obviously you're making a difference. Little by little. Yeah, little by little. I mean, you're absolutely making a difference. So I would encourage you to continue doing that. Yeah. Because change has to come from within. It really does. Yeah. And then if our history books aren't printing the real history, that's one thing that my son says is like, you're just getting this sugar coating of history, and it's not even, the students aren't being taught real history. And so, but you are absolutely making a difference.
Thank you.
Yeah, just being there, just, it makes a difference too. Yeah, and I think you're right. I've seen some changes too with adding diversity to the staff. I think that makes a difference too.
Yeah, it's needed. It's needed because even if you just have one young lady who sees what you're doing in that school, and that changes the trajectory of who she wants to be and things that she knows about herself and her awareness, that's huge. And then to actually be bold enough to put up your own presentation of Black History Month the second year that you were there. I mean, that's absolutely needed. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that too. Okay, what else do you want to tell us?
Oh, I don't know.
So like what do you want people to know? Like we've talked a little bit about, what's missing, what can we do? Like, why is it important? But like when what do you want people to know? Like, what do you want our listeners who
white people, what do you want white people to know? Really, because that's who
needs to know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
I think if anything, just listen without being defensive, listen without trying to figure out how you can share your own sob story or life story, if you will, because it's just different. Right. And I think we can work together. And I ultimately feel like that's what we want to do. I think we all want to work together to make these changes. But a lot of that just starts with just some open, candid conversation, not filled with fire and emotion, but just to listen, like, let me hear your story. Let me understand. And what can I do differently? I think that's what was so refreshing about even our lunch discussion that day, is to be able to have an open conversation. And then, for me to share like, wow, this is how I felt. And even just you and the other coworkers, simple apology, like that made a huge difference in just feeling like, let's work together and move forward. Not that I feel like anybody was walking around or holding anything in or any kind of grudges, but it does put up subtle walls. And I think as people, as America, we've got to work to pull down those walls. And not just cancel history. I think my husband and I were talking about that today. We're so frustrated. Like now the schools are like, we're not celebrating Dr. Seuss Day. And I'm like, I get it. It was bad what he did for sure, that was the time period. That's what was happening. So let's teach the good and the bad. Like, let's teach what he did, not so good. But I mean, look at the fun books he has. Like, we don't have to throw out everything, because I don't think that that's teaching history either. So I think that's part of just the listening. I think in trying to quickly, let's appease everybody, let's put a Band-Aid on this and move on, we miss the heart of the issue. And the issue is, let's just tell the full story, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's okay. It's okay that we have ugly parts of America. It's okay that we have ugly parts in our family and how we were raised and we grew up. Let's just change it and let's do better. So I guess that's what I would want people to know.
Yeah, and I agree. You know, I have enjoyed so much Emmanuel Acho's uncomfortable conversations with a Black man, because they can be uncomfortable conversations because you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a heart and you're willing to learn, like one of the things that I shared with you is early last year when the race tension was really high, I had my friends in Northern Virginia, he's a pastor, and he put together a panel of men, of pastors, both Black and white, came together in a Zoom, and they talked about race. And one of the things that, I call him my nephew, one of the things that he said was that he doesn't like it when people say, I don't see race, I don't see color. And I thought, oh, I say that. Like, I say that. I don't see color. And of course I see color. I don't care about your color. So I would say that in the sense of, because it doesn't matter to me.
Mm-hmm.
I totally understood what he was saying, because he said, when people see me, I want you to see that I am a Black man. And I thought, oh, I'll never say that again. But until I heard him say that. So you're so right in that we have to be able to have conversation, because that's the only way we grow and learn, and about listening, to not fix it, you know, which is one of the things, even as a life coach, that I teach. You're not supposed, I'm not listening to you because I want to fix what's wrong in that sense, because I can't change history.
Right.
But what we can do is, like you said, go from today forward better, making better decisions, listening to one another, being respectful. One of the things KJ said earlier today was, just because you don't have a context for that doesn't mean it's not real. So just because I don't have a context for, so I have a friend whose her son is mixed, and she was very concerned when he got his driver's license about being behind the wheel. And I have another friend who thought that that was ridiculous because of where we live in suburban here in this area, right? Great Bridge. And thought, well, that's crazy. And she said, I'm afraid for my son too. Okay, your blonde hair, blue-eyed son is not going to encounter the same thing as hers. And just because you don't understand it doesn't mean that's not a very real fear for her. Right? So, and I think we do that. If you understand your story, you know, like you were saying, don't try to supersede your story. Well, if you think that's something, okay, because privilege is a thing.
It is a thing.
I mean, it is. You know, I went round and round. I don't do it now. But last year on Facebook, man, I went round and round, and people were like, well, I grew up like, yeah, dude, me too. Poor on a dirt road. But I've never been mistreated because I was white. Like, yeah. So I agree. Listen, and then listen with compassion. Do your homework. Yeah. So thank you so much for having this conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. It's good. I enjoy being able to, in a way, be a bridge. I think one of the things that has afforded me, when I grew up, I was the only minority in my middle school. It was me and one other little girl in kindergarten in the entire school. And so I think those experiences, and then even working at some of the schools that I've worked at, it's given me the opportunity to learn how to talk to both sides. And so I enjoy trying to be a bridge and help. And I'm secure in who I am. I'm secure in my color and my race and my culture. And so I'm not as easily offended so I can take on more questions. And so I enjoy being able to answer questions and help get us forward, because I want my kids to have something different.
Me too. Yeah, me too.
Yes. Yes. Yeah,
Well, thank
absolutely.
you. Okay.
This has been amazing.
It's been so good.
Really, really good. Really good.
So tell our listeners, first of all, tell them about your husband's book, and you guys have a podcast as well. So tell me a little bit about those things. And then for our listeners, we will include all of that in the show notes for you.
Okay, sure. So I'll start with his book. My husband's book it's called A Voice in the Crowd. And it was his way of wrapping his mind around everything that was happening. All of the killings, murders, that was just happening. And just realizing, even, with COVID, like everyone's trying to exercise, and he would go running and then feeling like, okay, now I can't go running. I've got to change my running time and run like in the hottest part of the day because I want to come home to my family. And so just all of his emotions that he's been feeling. He worked at a predominantly Black school. And so just feeling for his students and what they were feeling and the conversations that they were having. So his book is really a compilation of just his thoughts, his feelings, wanting to even educate. He does include a lot of history in the book to hopefully spark people to go back and learn about people outside of your Rosa Parks and Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King. So I'm very proud of him. He worked really hard. He poured a lot of his emotions in the book. And so, you can read it. And he does do some live readings and has talked about different parts of the poem. So, you can find that book, A Voice in the Crowd. And then, yes, we do have a podcast as well. I'm Just Saying, and because we say a lot. And so we talk a little bit about everything from marriage to kids to teaching to just how is your day kind of conversations. When we were in the thick of COVID, the senseless shows we started watching and got hooked on. So there's just a little bit of everything up there. So you can find us mostly on YouTube. If you go to I'm Just Saying, you can find our podcast up there, and we record them live because we make a lot of faces, and it's sometimes just funnier to watch than it is to listen. So we would love to have you guys join us and listen.
I love that.
Awesome. That's awesome. All right, KJ, take it away with your rapid fire questions.
Yes. And for the listeners, we will put all that in the show notes as well. So you can get that book and listen to that podcast. You'll put their podcast at the top of your list and our second. Okay, Leah, when you need to be brave, but you feel fear, what do you do?
Joshua 1:9 is one of the first scriptures I've ever learned. It's what I say over and over and over. When we lost our first child, Joshua was his name, because that's the only scripture I could keep saying. So Joshua 1:9.
I love that. Be strong and courageous. Yes, I love it. What's on your nightstand right now?
Belly oil, because I'm pregnant, and lots of water, and my face moisturizer, and rice cakes, because that's the only thing I could hold down.
I love that.
Look, she has a nightstand full of self-care.
Right?
I do. I have the face roller too, now that I'm like looking over there in a book.
We love that face roller.
KJ gave me one for Christmas, and sometimes she's messaging me, and she's in her car, and she's just rolling her face in the car while she's driving down the road. I love that so much.
Yes.
We love it. We love it. So, what is one takeaway that you would like the listeners to know?
Let's see. One takeaway that, oh my goodness. That's a good one. The only thing I could think of, and it could be because I was just telling someone this. Just a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. It's my favorite line from Mary Poppins. But I mean, I think it fits. Just, be sweet and help the medicine go down, because sometimes these things are gross. I personally don't like taking medicine. So that's what I got.
Yeah. Hey, that's good. And we could apply that to a lot of different areas in our life, right? Like if we would just be kind, then we could, be okay in the world.
Yep.
Yeah. And
Say things with the little sandwich method and get it on out there.
Yes. The
good.
Sandwich method. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. Listen, this has been really good. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
glad that you agreed to come on and have this conversation with us. I know our listeners have learned something. So listeners, we're just going to ask that you continue to share these podcasts with your friends and through social media so more people can be part of the conversation.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
No
Leah.
problem. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening, y'all.
And have the best day available to you. Hey, you guys, we just want to say thank you today. We want to thank our listeners and those of you that have subscribed to the Simple Conversations podcast. We want to thank our sound and production team for all of their hard work behind the scenes. That would be Tim and Alyssa Ranker. And we also want to give a big shout out to CMS Mortgage Solutions and our friend Karina Carter, because without her, it would be really challenging for us to make this podcast. So keep listening and share it with your friends. Thanks.
Hey y'all, this is KJ from Simple Conversations Where Grace Meets Strength. Thank y'all so much for listening and tuning in. If it weren't for y'all, there would be no reason for us to do this. Listen, we need your help. We need your support. So head on over to patreon.com/Simple Conversations and decide exactly how you want to be involved. For $5 a month, you would get access to behind the scenes content. For $25 a month, you would get that as well as a shout out on the podcast or fan input. As a supporter for $50 a month, you would get all that in the previous two tiers, as well as a one-time gift or book that Alice and I have read or are reading that we think would add value to your life. Or for $100 a month, we consider you family. You ever heard that before? That's friends that are so good that we consider you family. So you would get everything in the previous 3 tiers, as well as exclusive branded merchandise from Simple Conversations. So listen, our heart's desire is to do more and to be more. And so in order for us to do that, we need help. And so we're dependent on you to help us make that happen. So thanks for tuning in and thanks for your support. See y'all.